So to kick off the week, Sega sent out these postcards, and they sent me one, Sega on the front, new era, new energy on the back, imploring us to tune in to the Game Awards. So I went into it expecting something from Sega. I was kind of believing maybe we would see Virtua Fighter, for example. I wasn't getting my expectations too high up there, so I certainly was not expecting to tune in and see 5 legacy intellectual properties be revived in front of me in the span of about, a minute and a half. It was a very, very quick trailer that sort of set the foundation for Sega's near-term and long-term goals, and I think there's a bit more to this story than originally meets the eye, and I want to go over some of that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. And you pretty much have to subscribe because we're talking about Jet Grind Radio and Crazy Taxi making a comeback. I mean, like, really? It's interesting stuff to consider what those could look like now. I think something like Jet Grind Radio will translate over easier, whereas Crazy Taxi might be a little more involved to figure that one out. Nonetheless, I mentioned Virtua Fighter. I want to point this out before we go any further in, as the Washington Post, Gene Park, did talk to the co-chief officer at Sega America, about exactly what happened here with these games kind of coming back, and said, hey, you know, we have been investing in some of the big franchises. Think of Sega having Sonic, Yakuza, those big titles kind of out there and consistently growing them along with Persona. And now you go, okay, well, what else can we do? Hence this trailer that set up a ton of different games. But for Virtua Fighter, he does say here that they are evaluating right now. Virtua Fighter doesn't use so many trick special moves like in Street Fighter. It's very realistic. How can we make it more dramatic? It's something we're working on. So Virtua Fighter fans, they hear you, and they're working on it right now. They're just trying to figure out how they could maybe have it stand up to something like Street Fighter, for example, or I guess Mortal Kombat, without it having these flashy, over-the-top special moves. Nonetheless, we had a bunch of games announced, and I took some screenshots because I was very excited. I figured Sean would have had a video by now. Maybe he'll put one up today. Maybe he got so hyped he just passed out from all the excitement.
Shinobi!
What?
Golden Axe!
Crazy Taxi. Is this their super game?
I did it!
What?
I did it! My years of complaining has made this a reality! Yeah! Let's go!
So I guess I had to pick up the mantle here for the Sega fans. But after basically getting called out, obviously, by Sega here, I had to respond to it. And I will give Sega some credit here, some props, because I mean, they're legitimately going back to a treasure trove of intellectual properties that have just been dormant for a while. Seeing something like this with Jet Grind Radio pop up, visually speaking, I think it looks like I'd expect. It is early development footage. I think this is very important, as publishers and developers are always concerned to show things, quote unquote, too early and have a bad first impression with it. For example, this character may not have any kind of animations for their face or anything, and it's going to look very, very stiff, robotic, but none of us really care because, hey, look, Jet Grind Radio is coming back. That's legitimately it, right? But I think early on, concept-wise, this looks good. It looks like what I'd expect out of a newer Jet Grind Radio, and I like the idea they're going to have, like, parkouring, it looks like, climbing and moving around, maybe just more freedom of movement and tricks and other things you can do with it. So I'm on board with this. Again, very quick, brief flashes as to what this game could be. So I'm interested. Now, I am also curious how they're going to approach this, in the sense that live service games are all the rage currently, and if I can think of 100 different ways that you could monetize this further, I mean, you figure they would too, but maybe they just want a Jet Grind Radio game for the intellectual property to be revived and strengthened. We'll come back to that here soon, because we also have to talk about Streets of Rage. It looks like what you'd expect here, right? Kind of being a 3D action beat-em-up style game, sure. And again, visually speaking, early on, but I think the concept is there. It makes sense. It's what you figured it would look like. Shinobi, also seeing a revival. And I love the way this game looks, by the way. This is exactly the direction I would want them to go in with it. I feel like a lot of publishers, the big publishers, I don't say are concerned or hesitant, but they look at 2D games as how much money can we put into this thing realistically, and can we make a profit on, right? I mean, that's obviously what the bottom line is there, but I think 2D games still have a place in gaming, obviously, without it having to be a Metroid. I feel like Shinobi, or just a game in general, if it is good, even though it's 2D, I feel like you can still do pretty well with it, and love the art style here with this, by the way. Seeing it in motion was really impressive. It has kind of that almost that hand-drawn watercolor look to it at times in motion. It looks very smooth. So I absolutely want to play this Shinobi game, and I'm just glad they didn't try to force this into just being 3D. Like, the PS2 game is fine. I like that when it came out, but something about going back to it and saying, you know what, 2D Shinobi, stylize it, make it look really cool. Yeah, this is I think the best path for it. We also have Golden Axe. This is the one that this is the one that has me scratching my head a little bit. I'm not really sure with Golden Axe. My concern is that it feels too generic, I guess. Not that it's necessarily setting up to be a bad game or anything. I'm curious how they make it feel unique as opposed to it being kind of cookie cutter overall. So that's, again, that's the one out of all the games they announced that I'm most concerned about with it, because I feel like the others have an identity immediately when you look at it, whereas Golden Axe, it's like, well, yeah, I guess that looks like Golden Axe, but I don't know. It might be hard to pick out from a crowd, is what I'm trying to say, with at least what we're seeing here. Crazy Taxi is this is an interesting one, because I'm curious if this is another one they look at and go, could we make that live service like? The microtransactions, the customization, so on and so on there. But Crazy Taxi always was like an arcade type game. It didn't have like a big time story, nothing like that. It was just, hey, get in your taxi, drive around, cause mayhem to get a person from point A to point B and rack up the highest score and the most money. And that was it. And we played it constantly back on the Dreamcast. It also had a really cool soundtrack to go around along with that, with Offspring and stuff, and it fit perfectly into just the mayhem and chaos that was unfolding on screen. But it is a very memorable game, I feel like, for most people who had a Dreamcast. And this still looks kind of like it has that, the Dreamcast had that very clean look to it. It's like the VGA look, right? Where very sharp edges, very, very bright and colorful. And it looks like they're still trying to go with that sort of art style and visual style here. And I feel like this could do really well as like the Cruise and Blast kind of game. It doesn't, the thing with a lot of these games now is I feel like many companies, publishers, look at their games and go, these need to be $200 million big budget AAA games. I feel like there's that place for the $40 or $50 game that is 8 to 10 hours long, but it's a really fun 8 to 10 hours. Or in this case, just an arcade experience where you want to play it over and over and over again, or hang out with some friends and take turns running through it, or go online and compare high scores. I feel like there is a place for that. Now, they hit us with this card at the end: Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, Crazy Taxi, and more. And the big thing here is and more, obviously, because while it's really fun seeing 5 games franchises see revival in the span of 90 seconds, of course you're now thinking, well, what else could we get? Altered Beast, I saw that was brought up. Comic Zone, I think, would be really cool, because I look at Shinobi. All right, if I go back here and I find I look at Shinobi and I'm like, wow, if they're willing to do that kind of art style with a Shinobi game, what could they do with a Comic Zone? I mean, like, look at this. And then think of like the comic, the panel around it and all the cool animations and stuff they could do there. Yeah, I want Comic Zone. Skies of Arcadia is another one that's been brought up, and I know Skies of Arcadia is a game that I remember very fondly, but it wasn't exactly an overwhelmingly popular IP. However, I kind of feel like Sega is I kind of feel like they're setting something up here, because I thought it was strange that they had a trailer that just revived 5 intellectual properties. But when I heard Jeff Keighley say, I didn't expect that. I don't know what Sega's really thinking there. Who would have thought? 5 games getting announced. It was out of the norm, wasn't it? It's so. Also, this is what I assume Sean looked like the entire time he's watching that. I had to get a screenshot of that. So I'm sitting here thinking about this, and like, what in the world is Sega doing? They told us about this, actually. This is from their Investors Report 2023, so months ago they posted this, and, well, they have transmedia strategy here. Hey, look, Crazy Taxi, Shinobi, Jet Grind Radio, it's all in there. Like, they told us, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to bring these back at some point, and I guess they decided to just blitz us with it, but I feel like they could do things like, okay, if this game catches on or finds some interest in the community, maybe we'll do something with Netflix or Amazon Prime or just a series for it. Maybe we'll try a movie. And I feel like that's one part of this. Sega is trying to build up their intellectual properties, right? They have Sonic, Like a Dragon or Yakuza, and they have Persona. Those are very strong intellectual properties right now. But why not build up more of them? So that's sort of where I'm looking at this currently. If they get Jet Grind Radio to do really well, I think that would be an awesome adaptation into a series, for example, with a really fun art style behind it. Think of how Cyberpunk had its Netflix adaptation. I think you could do something really cool in kind of that setup, that look with Jet Grind Radio. Now, there is one other part of this. I think it's very interesting that it shows up once again next to the Super game. So this is launching revivals from our rich IP library and aiming for success with a Super game. So they have these kind of both together as this is sort of our future, okay? We're going to bring these games back, and we're also going to develop this Super game that some have mentioned it's $700-800 million to make this thing, which sounds incredibly risky for Sega. And when I think of risky outings or risky properties or projects or something for a publisher or a company, I immediately think they look around and go, how can we make this less risky? Let's get some intellectual properties that people know, and that's what we'll bet on. I don't think this Super game is going to be a new IP. I think it's going to be something that they already have, and I almost wonder if it's going to be a group of things that they already have, as in this would be more of a collaborative effort across a bunch of intellectual properties, but they need more than just 3 is the thing. So when I see them mention that they're going to launch revivals of older intellectual properties, and then they're also going to make steady headway in development of this Super game, which they've been trying to describe this thing for a while. From what I can tell, I mean, they say it again here, they encourage stakeholders to look forward to the fruit of our efforts, which include R&D to create a game that builds a whole worldview involving the entire gaming ecosystem, including not only players, but also streamers who stream the game and their viewers. I kind of feel like that they are thinking, hey, can we use Crazy Taxi characters from that or something? Can we use Shinobi? Can we use Jet Grind Radio? Can we tie that in with Sonic, Persona? Can we have like a dragon representation here and just tie it into the Super game that originally I thought would be a platform, but they're continuing to talk about it as just a game. I think of a collaborative effort. I think of Smash Brothers. There's a bunch of different properties all thrown into a fighting party game, whatever you want to call it, but it's all there. It's all represented. People get really excited about all these different characters. I don't think they're making that, but in that same kind of idea, if you will, where they're bringing a bunch of IPs that they strengthened over time together for one big Super game. But while that is just speculation on my part for the Super game, one thing's for sure, things have absolutely flipped for Sega now going into the next 5 or 6 years. I think we're still a ways off for any of these games releasing, but it's really fun to think that we have some of these classic intellectual properties from like the Dreamcast days, for example, coming back with like the current generation and maybe beyond. So exciting stuff. I am very, very curious to see what Sega has coming up here over the next 3 or 4 years, because that Super game, Yeah, apparently that is going to release by March 2026 at the latest. I assume we'll be seeing that thing in the next year or so. So very, very interesting stuff coming up. But let me know what you guys think about this down below, especially after Sega shows up to the Game Awards with 5 older games that people thought would never see a revival coming up here soon, as well as other games, Virtua Fighter, Comic Zone, Skies of Arcadia. Leave your best guesses even down below on what you would like to see Sega bring back. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.